ACN TV. We will be right back. Stay tuned on ACN TV. We will be right back.
Story of what our people go through, more than the victims, the families, and us, Southern Cameroonians, who go through the daily pain of providing for those in the bushes, those in Nigeria, those who are displaced, and those in prison. But as we cry for justice and peace, a peace that addresses the root cause of this conflict, we must remember to honor those that have untimely gone before us and account for every death and abuse our civilian population suffered and continue to suffer as a result of this conflict. For this to happen, we must document and track all incidents of human rights abuses and keep a record that is not only accurate, not only current, but authentic. Currently, even though tens of civilians get killed almost daily, weekly, the numbers have remained, I quote, more than 3,000 since late 2018. No data, and even disaggregated data exists that shows how many unarmed civilians, children, students, women, our parents have been killed. How many homes have been burnt, not villages, or how many Southern Cameroonians have disappeared without any trace. I am a data-driven person myself, and the stagnated number of deaths since 2018, regardless of the ongoing massacres, is not only telling, but it undermines the severity of this armed conflict. Available data from different sources indicates, and I will quote, since 2017, the crisis has resulted in 3,000 killed, close to 1,000 of whom are civilians. Some indicate a shift in the conflict from the 9th to the 35th in rank for countries at risk of mass atrocities, in part due to, as a state, improved freedom of movement for men and the lack of curfews. As professionals who understand the importance of data in policy decision-making, these reports downgrade the severity of the ongoing conflict. The lack of adequate documentation continue to undermine the conflict and the urgent need for international engagement, including humanitarian assistance to our IDPs and refugees. So our hope is that this project will facilitate the collection of data on all deaths and abuses, documenting victims and evidence to hold perpetrators to account, but also to demonstrate the severity of this conflict so it can ignite better policy decisions. We also hope that this data will be used for future research by our universities and also for other processes. But most importantly, we believe that this initiative will deter a culture of impunity that breeds violence and abuse and more abuse, and prevent warring parties from engaging in any form of atrocities. We believe that this tool will bring more light to the true, current, and accurate data. And so the coalition has been able to leverage the use of technology and put together a dedicated team of Southern Cameroonian volunteers, including foreigners from different law firms across the world, including criminal justice attorneys in the US, the UK, and Africa, and Southern Cameroonian legal minds, a GIS expert, a crime investigator, a data scientist, and a data security expert, and others, to provide legal, investigative, and data management services for this project to achieve the objectives set by Southern Cameroonian professionals. The team will work independently and exercise professional judgment in assessing every incident reported, but they will also identify past incidents, investigate and document them. The local teams are also drawn from communities that have been affected by this conflict. The coalition strives to work with other stakeholders, other available stakeholders working in this direction. So launching this initiative today is the beginning of a very long road that we know, but we are very committed to getting to the end. So to launch this initiative, permit me to introduce our speakers. Dr. Kerry Wigham is an assistant professor of genocide and mass atrocity prevention at the Institute of Genocide and Mass Atrocity Prevention, Binghamton University, State University of New York. In addition to his duties, he coordinates the Institute's online programs. He has published articles in genocide studies and prevention and has written a chapter for the edited volume on reconstructing atrocity prevention published in 2015. Previously, he has been a postdoctoral researcher at Columbia University's Institute for the Study of Human Rights and a visiting scholar at Rutgers University's Center for the Study of Genocide and Human Rights. Dr. Wigham is also the communication officer for the International Association of Genocide Scholars. His research focuses on memory practices and civil society activism in post-atrocity societies. Mary Lamech is the project coordinator of the Montreal Institute for Genocide and Human Rights Studies at Concordia University, Canada. After completing a bachelor's degree in history, specialization in genocide studies at Montreal's Concordia University, Marie volunteered in Ghana and Rwanda for several months, where she also conducted research on reconciliation. She has a master's degree in conflict, security, and development from King's College London Department of War Studies. She specialized in complex political emergencies, post-conflict reconciliation, and women's role during conflicts. Marie's research and policy interests are foreign affairs, international security, mass atrocity prevention, violent extremism, and new technologies for human rights. Marie also writes for the opencanada.org and is the foreign affairs editor at the Mantle, and currently serves as president of the Canadian International Council's Montreal branch. Juliette Pawi is a senior research analyst at the Global Center for the Responsibility to Protect. She conducts research and advocates for populations at risk of mass atrocities, focusing on Cameroon, Nigeria, Sudan, and South Sudan. She leads the Global Center's work on groups of friends on R2P in New York, and is involved in the center's work on UN peacekeeping, protection of civilians, and international justice. She holds a bachelor's and a master's in cultural anthropology and development sociology from Leiden University, a bachelor's in political science from VU University in Amsterdam, and a master's in international security and law from the University of Southern Denmark. Prior to joining the Global Center, she interned and worked for the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the International Criminal Court. Thank you for accepting to take part in this event. Each of you has unique experiences and expertise in this subject. And Juliette, you currently lead efforts to prevent mass atrocities in the Southern Cameroons. We'll be happy to hear from you how this tool that you've had the opportunity to see aligns with your work, and how the victims of abuse, their families, and rights activists can leverage this tool. I will start with you, Dr. Wigham, and then Marie, and then lastly with Juliette. Please, Dr. Kerry, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Henry. Thank you for that kind introduction, for the invitation, and also for that sobering account of the current situation in Cameroon, which really sets the stage for the need for tools like this, the unfortunate need for tools like this. I want to begin by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you today from the ancestral land of the Lenape, who are themselves victims of genocide in my home country of the United States. As Henry mentioned, I come representing both the Institute for Genocide and Mass Atrocity Prevention, an academic institution at Binghamton University that's goal is really to bring together academics, practitioners, and policymakers to make prevention a reality around the world. And I also work at an international non-governmental organization called the Auschwitz Institute for the Prevention of Genocide and Mass Atrocities, which strives to honor the memory of the victims of Auschwitz and the Holocaust by making sure that no one else around the world suffers their fate of being killed because of their identity. At both of those institutions, we really look at prevention, genocide, mass atrocity prevention, as a multi-stage phenomenon that's not at all synonymous with only intervention in the midst of crisis, but really it's about thinking about stopping the long social and political processes that can lead to mass killing long before they reach the stage that they have reached currently in Cameroon, and also focusing on the things that we can do to rebuild societies in the aftermath of mass violence so that these sorts of atrocities do not recur. And I want to talk a little bit very briefly about how I see the incident tracker being a tool that can help in all of those stages of prevention. First and most obviously, this is a tool that's become necessary because we are in the midst of crisis in Cameroon. Atrocities are already taking place. People are already being killed and have been for years now. So during midstream prevention efforts, monitoring and reporting tools can be an essential mechanism for responding to ongoing atrocities in a number of ways. They can, one, be an avenue for victims and family members of victims to be heard, to have a sense that their agency can be restored, agency that is often taken from them by perpetrators. So giving them an avenue to say what is happening to them is an incredibly important tool, as long as those reports are heeded by those of us who need to hear those words. We have a responsibility to those victims that their voices not be, that they not be speaking into a vacuum, right? These tools can also reinforce and recognize the idea that even though we think about atrocities as these large numbers of victims, these large statistics, 6 million, 800,000, 1.5 million, et cetera, that really mass atrocities are always happening at the local level. They are always happening to one person and then another person and then another person, on and on. And that's one thing that these tools can help to remind us of. And finally, compiling this data and providing it to states, NGOs, and international organizations can hopefully play an important role in motivating and reminding those actors of their role and their responsibility to protect populations, not only populations that are directly relevant to their daily lives, but to populations all over the world. When the killing finally comes to an end in Cameroon, and it can't be soon enough, when it does come up to an end, the information gathered from tools like this can also be a foundation for providing redress and repair and reparations to the people who have suffered, because there will be a record of that suffering, and it can be a tool for helping to identify where needs are the greatest. We have to recognize, however, that the need for this incident tracker, as I mentioned, is itself representative of our collective failure to actually prevent atrocities. Now we're trying to stem the onslaught to prevent further killing, but we have already collectively failed at actually preventing mass atrocities in this case, and we really can't forget that. We should be working to build a world where trackers like this are not necessary, or where they can be used to identify much lower level human rights violations and therefore serve as true early warning systems that identify violations so that we can respond to them before they escalate to the level of mass atrocity. On that note, I'm very happy to see that some of the violations that people are welcome to report through this mechanism do include some of these other forms of human rights violations that are not just about all of the most horrific forms of crimes that are associated with mass atrocities, but also things like destruction of property, discriminatory practices, exclusion, unequal access to basic resources. Those reporting those levels of violations can be a really important tool in upstream prevention, in identifying what populations are suffering, where they're suffering the most, and provoking actions so that we don't see those discriminatory practices escalate to the point of mass atrocity. Paying attention to all levels of human rights abuses now and in the future provides an opportunity to intervene at much earlier levels of conflict so that it never reaches this stage. And I hope that we learn these lessons. But in the meantime, I'm also very hopeful that this tracker will play a crucial role in saving lives and bringing an end to all forms of identity-based violence in Cameroon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wigham. Marie, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me today. I can only agree with Kerry with what he said. And I want to underline the importance of this project in particular by perhaps looking at the way technology has been used over the past, I would say, 10 to 15 years to track and report on mass atrocity crimes. So I remember the first time I saw the use of technology for this kind of crisis or early warning mechanism was actually in Sudan, in Darfur. Obviously, we all know, I think, about the Satellite Sentinel project, which was launched in 2010 by George Clooney, and the Enough project, because it was George Clooney, it gained a lot of attention. And basically what the project did, it used satellite imagery, Google Maps, and field reports from humanitarian groups on the ground and NGOs to monitor war crimes. So basically you could see which villages had been destroyed, because you had before and after images. You could see the troops movement. So even though there were a few journalists on the ground, what we can see from space serve as evidence that something was taking place. So basically the aim of the project was to kind of create an architecture of accountability. And since then, I've been interested in the application of technology for tracking mass atrocities. And so, for example, I looked at Crisis Tracker, which is a tool that is used in the DRC and in the Central African Republic to basically track armed groups' activity and conflict incidents in these two countries. There is also another tool called People's Intelligence, which is a platform that taps kind of the power of SMS messages and speak to tweets to help victims kind of document their own stories of experiencing human rights violations. And it's a good tool because it has a conversational add-on as well that allows people to converse with individuals and give more information about the incidents. And then here in Canada, we have something called the Sentinel Project, which is an early warning system. So it's basically, it's really more of a prevention tool. So it's an information and management and decision support system that's based on what we know about how genocide occurs. And like Carrie said, we need to focus on prevention. So the human rights violations that include kind of exclusion, destruction of religious sites or cultural sites, those are important to track because those are early signs of possible larger mass atrocity crimes. And since then, I think over the past few years, we've seen, for example, in China right now, China is obviously denying the genocide against the Uyghur, but there are a lot of things we can see from space. We can see the building of more detention camps. We can see people being moved from detention camp to detention camps. And it's a good, I think anger against the Chinese government is growing a little bit. We're seeing some calls for boycotting of the Olympics. So I think, you know, in real time, we're seeing something happen. Even in the US, all those phone messages and videos that we saw on social media during the Capitol attack in January, those can be used for prosecution as well. So technology can be very useful. And so what I want to underline the importance of this project, because it goes beyond the kind of normative tools that we've used in the past. We can get a better understanding of the local situation, because the situation in Cameroon is so much more than an internal conflict. It's much more complicated. We can use the results to educate and do more research, to force the international community to take steps to prevent more atrocities. We can stop trade deals. We can, also gather more and more information, because yes, perhaps the military feels like it is, it has a lot of impunity right now and it can do whatever it wants. But in the long term, I think whatever you document can be used for justice. Like even in Rwanda right now, there are still people being prosecuted for crimes. So it might not be immediate, but in the long term, it can lead to something. Although one final thing that I want to say is that there are significant challenges. In the long term, for example, the Satellite Sentinel project did not stop mass killings in Darfur. And in 2010, we have a lot of skepticism about surveillance technologies and tracking tools, because those tools are amazing. But as long as the international community or regional organizations don't act, there isn't much we can do. So in the long term, it's absolutely crucial for justice. But in the short term, like right now in Cameroon, for example, we're not seeing much action from the international community or regional organizations. So right now, the internal dynamics of the Security Council are not great for atrocity prevention because of the presence of Russia and China. So documentation is basically absolutely crucial, but it's not a substitute for political will. So we need to push for more action from states and international agencies as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie, for sharing your thoughts. Juliet, please.
Thank you, Henry. And I also want to thank the Coalition for Dialogue and Negotiations for organizing today's important event and for launching the Human Rights Incident Reporting and Tracking Tool on the armed conflict in the southern Cameroons. What I will do is I think I will briefly discuss why I think why this tracking tool is important and where these tools can be useful for organizations like the one I'm working for, and how these tools can also potentially contribute to justice and accountability for atrocities in Cameroon. So the Global Center for the Responsibility to Protect, the organization that I'm working for, examines situations around the world where there is a likelihood of atrocity crimes being committed or where atrocity crimes are currently ongoing. We provide recommendations to the international community on how to effectively respond to or prevent those crimes from happening. And we mobilize timely and effective action at the UN Security Council or the Human Rights Council. So for about 4 years now, we're paying close attention to the situation in the Anglophone regions of Cameroon. And we believe that there is, as we already discussed earlier, an imminent risk of atrocity crimes, and civilians are currently already enduring atrocity crimes. So in this context, and to echo what the previous panelists and everyone has been saying, the collection of data on atrocity risks and crimes, as well as broad human rights violations and abuses, is important, especially given the current lack of any systematized monitoring and reporting formally authorized by intergovernmental and multilateral institutions such as the Security Council and the Human Rights Council. So besides the engagement of the UN Special Rapporteurs and UN treaty bodies, there is currently no United Nations authorized entity or actor based in Cameroon that is mandated to investigate serious human rights violations and abuses, and is required to regularly report back to the Human Rights Council and the Security Council. And in the past, we have seen that researchers from big human rights organizations, including Human Rights Watch, have been denied access to the country. So it's hard for the international community to have access to reliable and verified and systematized human rights reporting. And this, of course, also means that holding perpetrators to account for these violations is becoming increasingly challenging. And due to the lack of verified and reliable human rights reporting, the conflict in Cameroon is often misunderstood, as my previous panelists also have mentioned. So only the bigger attacks, for example, recently in Kumba and Mautu, have received international attention. And there were calls for accountability, and even by the UN Secretary General. But what the international community may not be aware of is that these violations and abuses are ongoing on a daily basis. So clarity on complex situations like the Anglophone crisis is only reached when there is a plethora of resources, and this tool could potentially contribute to that. And there is definitely a need for mechanisms like managed by highly skilled staff that allow for independent and impartial information, and that has a clear monitoring system in place to avoid the submission of any information that is unverified or can put victims at risk when data security and privacy are not sufficiently considered. So reliable and verified human rights reporting is useful for organizations like the Global Center for the Responsibility to Protect, because our offices are based in New York and in Geneva. And we rely heavily on reporting that comes from Cameroon, either by UN entities or partner human rights organizations. And we use this reporting from the ground to develop our advocacy strategy, to develop recommendations to member states, to Security Council and Human Rights Council members, and to mobilize a timely and effective response to the situation. And to briefly touch upon why this matters to international justice, I think that there is a huge potential for human rights monitoring mechanisms and tools to work with possible future transitional justice mechanisms, and that there is an increased awareness in the international community of this, because the situation in Cameroon is volatile, fluctuating, and with ongoing violence, currently available evidence and information may have been destroyed or is being destroyed. This happens in many situations in the world where crimes are being committed and where criminal investigations and proceedings are lacking. So over the past couple of years, we've noticed an increased awareness in the international community for the need to collect and preserve evidence until justice mechanisms have been established. For example, the establishment of the International Impartial and Independent Mechanism for Syria. And there are also currently several United Nations Human Rights Council mandated mechanisms that have a mandate to collect and preserve evidence, to clarify responsibility for violations and abuses of human rights and related crimes, and to make such information eventually available to all transitional justice mechanisms. So this tool launched today has hopefully the potential to collect the information that can educate the international community on the complexities of the human rights situation in Cameroon, and can be used in the future when justice is finally catching up with the perpetrators in Cameroon. So I think I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juliet. We're making sure that we catch up with the time that we've set for this launch. I would like us to just move to the launch. Our co-chair is Judith Ngwana, who is one of the co-chair of the Coalition for Dialogue and Negotiations. Judith became very much involved in advocacy when she joined the fight for Bring Back Our Internet during the internet shutdown in Cameroon. She has worked with different international organizations such as Access Now and Internet Sans Frontier in highlighting the ills of internet shutdown perpetrated by the Cameroon government. She's a strong advocate for the plight of Southern Cameroonians activists who have been arrested and jailed for hundreds of days after unfair military trials in Yaoundé. She is equally a steering committee member of the Cameroon Humanitarian Relief Initiative, helping thousands of refugees in Nigeria and IDPs and political prisoners in Cameroon. She believes strongly in the need to help bring a peaceful, mediated, and negotiated end to the ongoing conflict. In her day job, Judith leads the Global Telecoms Link Delivery and Contracts and Vendor Management Unit at the World Bank Group. And she is also the secretary of the organization's Africa Society. Judith holds an MBA from London Business School, a bachelor's in engineering honors in civil engineering from Enugu State University in Nigeria, and a master's in civil and structural engineering from the University of Sheffield in the United Kingdom. Judith, we are giving you the floor to officially launch this tool, and then we'll have a demo video from Kevin. Judith, please, you have the floor. You are muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Thank you. Thanks, Henry, and thanks again for that excellent introduction. It's really a pleasure, a somber one, but hopefully what everybody has said, especially with your introduction, sets the scene for where we are today in Cameroon. And I hope people who have not heard about it and have tuned in because they wanted to see this tool appreciate what we are going through at the moment in Southern Cameroon. It's really a somber situation. And as Juliet said before, really it's painful when just the major cases are being talked about, because every single day there's an atrocity being committed. And when we talk about atrocities, it's not just people being killed. People are abducted, kidnapped, people are tortured, people disappear, people are locked up with no trials. So when we talk about reporting an incident, we are talking about every single incident which is a violation of human rights as far as this conflict is concerned. We are here as CDN and we are pleading with our community. We feel the pain, but we need to tell the world our story. We need to report everything. We need to let the world know who is being hurt. You know a neighbor, you know a friend, you know a relative, you know somebody who knows somebody. You know who is suffering and you know who is committing the suffering. So it's incumbent on all of us, every single one of us, to let the world know what is going on. And this tool, we hope, with your help, will be able to tell our story. So our work here is not to apportion blame, but is to count every single incident and let the international community do what needs to be done. This tool is complementary to other tools existing out there. You've seen the panelists. We are collaborating with everybody whom we think can help. We will seek advice. We will work with other parties and make sure that we complement and report what is happening on the ground. There can be no peace without justice. And hopefully this tool will help to bring justice for the victims, as well as holding perpetrators accountable. Hopefully it will bring some route to reconciliation. We will be able to know the truth of what is going on, and in the long run, be able to provide compensation for victims and families as well. So thank you so much once more for joining this launch. We need you to help us tell our story. On that note, I'll hand over to Kevin, who will play a demo of the video. Thank you.
Behind every human rights violation in the southern Cameroons is a victim and a perpetrator. If the people are ever to find justice and durable peace, it is imperative that we commit ourselves to the honorable task of documenting all the incidents of human rights abuse, the names of the victims, the perpetrators, and accomplices, as well as any evidence that corroborates reported cases. Thanks to technology, this sacred task is now possible. Together, we can ensure that every incident is recorded for posterity and for international stakeholders who have an interest in bringing this conflict to an end. After numerous consultations with international stakeholders, including post-actions following U.S. Senate Resolution 684, ReportEscatrocities.info has been established as a new service tool by the Coalition for Dialogue and Negotiations. CDN is an international non-governmental organization with specific goals to facilitate dialogue and negotiation towards ending what can be referred as genocide in the southern Cameroons. This tool documents and tracks all internationally recognized war crimes in the southern Cameroon's war. In this video, we tell you about the crimes we are tracking, how the data is managed, the legal basis for our work, how we will report and manage atrocities, who gets access to this information, key features of this service, and what you can do to help get justice for the victims of this war. We track all human rights violations covered by international legal instruments. This tool can be used to document the crimes committed, the victim or victims, the perpetrator and accomplices, location, dates, and evidence. The crimes include, but not limited to, aggression, arbitrary arrest, arbitrary detention, burning and demolition of civilian homes, corruption, democide, ethnic cleansing and persecution, extrajudicial killings or other killings, forced disappearance, forced displacement, genocide, ghost detainee, impunity, joint criminal enterprise, lynching, massacres, military police brutality, persecution, prisoner abuse, rape, sexual harassment and abuse, summary execution, torture, unlawful house arrest. We are totally committed to protecting your identity and the information in your report. All reports on this site are confidential. You will have an option to post anonymously, and most of the questions we ask are optional. We follow industry standards in protecting your information from encryption at the point of collection to a secure and distributed storage architecture intended to retain all records for posterity. The fundamental human rights of all Southern Cameroonians are protected by international legal instruments, including, but not limited to, the Convention of the Non-Applicability of Statutory Limitation to War Crimes and Crimes Against Humanity, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and its optional protocols, the Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of prisoners of war, the Declaration on the Rights of Persons belonging to national or ethnic, religious, and linguistic minorities, as well as many other instruments to which Cameroon is a signatory or may be statutorily implicate the state of Cameroon. With your support, we will be able to accomplish the following: collect data from witnesses to crimes against humanity in the Southern Cameroons, validate the authenticity of all reports and collate supporting information of evidence, analyze reports and provide authenticated information to international partners, validate the identity of all victims and conduct additional inquiries to obtain supporting information, package reports with all pieces of supporting evidence, transmit new evidence to stakeholders, build relationships with local and international stakeholders who are interested in our data. The information you share is processed and shared with several organizations, including but not limited to the following: the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, the Congress of the United States of America, the State Department of the United States of America, the United Nations Office of the Commissioner for Human Rights, the United Nations, the European Union, the International Criminal Court, the United Nations Human Rights Council. Report all crimes committed to Southern Cameroonian civilians. Encourage all victims to report crimes. Create reports for known victims and incidents. Provide details and evidence to hold perpetrators accountable. Provide details and evidence to support all incident reports. Raise awareness of this platform by sharing with all Southern Cameroonians. Tell us what we can do to increase the capability and effectiveness of this online platform. This site is available in 5 languages: English, French, German, Portuguese, and Spanish, to ensure that we have as much international reach as possible. There are 3 key features to help us collect information: incident reports, incident tracker, and quick tips. These 3 features allow the coalition and respondents to collect and keep track of all crimes committed to unarmed Southern Cameroonian civilians. The incident report gives you the ability to provide the following optional pieces of information: details of victim or victims, incident location, date and time, the crime committed, the perpetrators and their identity information, family details of perpetrators, spouses, children, and other relatives, ages and other identifying information of family members, evidence establishing family relationships, assets of perpetrators in and out of Cameroon, accomplices, names and date of birth, identifying evidence of accomplices. We strongly recommend you create an incident report for every incident, victim, or perpetrator. If you do not wish to create an incident report, we also offer a quick tip feature where you can submit evidence and provide a brief summary of an incident, such as taking a picture or video with your phone. Add a description and submit as a quick tip. Please note that all information you provide can be done anonymously. If you would like us to follow up with you, or you wish to make yourself available for future consultation of an incident, victim, or perpetrator, we strongly encourage you to include your contact information. Many reported cases of massacre and abuses have been captured in the incident tracker page. We encourage you to take a look at the cases and provide more information on the victims and names of perpetrators. There is no statute limitation for crimes against humanity, which means a perpetrator can be prosecuted regardless of when the crime was committed. We will continue to update the reported incidents. This level of record keeping is what will ensure that lives are protected and the perpetrators of human rights abuse are brought to justice. This venture will require the participation of all Southern Cameroonians, friends of the Southern Cameroons, and all our partners for peace who have an interest in a viable solution to the Southern Cameroon civil war. The FAQ is provided to answer a few questions you may have. We encourage you to contact us and with questions, suggestions, or correction requests, or any other actions that can help advance the objective of this incident tracking initiative. The CDN believes in open dialogue. Thank you for watching and sharing this video so that every incident and victim of human rights abuse in Southern Cameroon will be identified and the perpetrators held accountable.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for that demo. Our understanding was really long, but we needed to make sure that our participants get an understanding of. The video will be on the website as well, so when you get to the website, you can also watch the video. Now, to get a better understanding of this site, let me introduce one of our members in the coalition to give you some insights about the tool and the notification available for users. Michael Senze is a lawyer by training, an attorney by training, and holds an LLB and an LLM in intellectual property and technology law. He currently serves as vice president at Trust Financial Corporation, which now owns the BB&T and First Trust Bank in the United States. Mike oversees strategic programs with legislative and technological impacts of the corporation. He is also a member of the Coalition for Dialogue and Negotiations. Please, Mike, you go ahead, please. You have the floor.
Thank you very much for your kind words, Henry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I will, try and preface my comments today by really spending some time to answer some key questions that may be on people's minds, questions that may not have been discussed. And there are three key things. Number one, why would anyone trust the system to put in their information? Number two, how secure is the system? And number three, what happens to the information that is collected? So I want to answer those questions, and then I'll go into some of the key functional components. So from the perspective of the CDN, this system is really designed to keep records, and we're talking about records of victims of a bloody conflict.
Mike,
So,
are you able to share your screen?
yes, I'll share just in a minute.
Okay.
Right, and so what we're trying to do here, just bear with me 1 second. What we're trying to do here is really ensure that from a record keeping perspective, we have all our ducks in a row. Now, let me just bear with me 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, okay, wonderful. So what we're doing here is really trying to address those three key questions. Now, I want to speak first about, the management of data on the site. So we talked about, the element of anonymity, right? We don't require any usernames or passwords to access the system. We do not store any data locally. We do have active ongoing monitoring, encryption. There's a firewall. We've got some fairly aggressive rules just to make sure that the site is as secure as possible. So I want to, level set on that, just because I understand, there may be people on, on this call who have some questions around, how secure the site is. Now, from a data management perspective, and, again, this is really around protecting your data. So we have considered, GDPR, which is the European, general data, protection regulation, just to make sure that we're compliant in that regard. We've looked at other pieces of legislation that are out there to really ensure we've got the right level of data protection around the information that is provided. And then we've also got some active protections in place, scans that are being run on a regular basis, firewall rules. We do have an audit trail. So in terms of best practices from a protection perspective, the CDN has done a lot to ensure that, those concerns are addressed. Now, the data that is sitting on this site is accessed using business intelligence tools. So the objective is to really have a framework for collaborative analysis, a framework that can give our international stakeholders the ability to access this data in visual format and be able to make some key decisions around that. So those are some of the key things that I just want to call out before we move into how this site will work. But to sum it up, it's important to know it's a system that is extensible, so we can adapt to changing dynamics. We can scale it up. Again, it can grow as big as we want it to be. It can include every single record, of every atrocity that's out there. And, we have an active regimen in place to ensure security is a top priority. Now, I will then proceed to the key functions on the site. Now, we've got, first of all, the element of responsiveness. It's designed to work to give you a good experience, regardless of whether you're using a tablet, a phone, or a computer. We also have built in some social sharing capabilities that will help you access, more than 150 social networks. And again, the objective there is just to raise awareness. The site is available in 10 languages at this point. We've included all the key Latin-based languages, and we've also added Arabic and Chinese. The CDN has also put in several features in here. We talked about the key feature of reporting an incident. That feature is primarily geared towards people who want to provide a comprehensive record that can actually establish culpability. We also have a quick tip feature, which will give you the ability, and again, you can access all of those using the menu. The quick tip feature will give you the ability to enter records, maybe citing an external source. It could be a document you've got on a Google Drive, a Dropbox. It could be a website article. It could be a Facebook post. So again, we're trying to build a comprehensive ecosystem where we are able to ingest data from all sorts of sources and give the key stakeholders the ability to access that data and be able to make some key decisions. Now, the other features that I want to bring to your attention, and again, you can go through the site and see what is out there, but we've got, action buttons for you to take all these key actions that I've talked about. We also have some additional content in here, which is really driven to support the feedback loop that the coalition wants to have with all the key stakeholders. So you should be able to access the site, and if you use the contact feature, which is over here, and you can access it here as well, that contact feature should give you the ability to, report on different incidents. It should give you the ability to contact the coalition, make suggestions, issue the request for corrections if we have data that you think, requires some level of revision. And again, the objective here is to collect as much data from all the different sources and get to a point where we have a comprehensive system that can really address all the reported incidents. The last point that I just wanted, go through is around the FAQs. We've got some questions that we've tried to address as well, and those questions are really geared towards, common questions that our users may have. Now, if you do find there is a question here that is not answered, we encourage you to submit one, and it will be considered, and a response will be put in here for everybody to see. Now, I just want to spend some time to, I'm going to click on the tracking system. And the tracking system is really one that, is important to understand what is going on. So the first thing is you have a caveat here, which really tells you that, this is a reference tool. So the CDN does not make judgments around, what happened with every incident. What we're doing is really collecting that information and encouraging the public to provide pieces of evidence to, to help arrive at any conclusions down the road. Now, within this tool, we've got about 270 incidents that have been, identified and reported so far. The way to access it, you will have them listed over here. It's sorted by date. You can put in a search to find out, a particular incident to see if it's there or not. If it's not there, we encourage you to report it if you are aware that, it's a valid incident. And this is, again, really built with a, to take advantage of some of the latest technologies in terms of accessing and presenting data. All you have to do is just click. As you click in, it will drill in, it will identify the conflict zones, and within every marker that you find on the map, you should be able to go in there and see what exactly is reported and on what date. And that pretty much sums up all the key features that I wanted to share with this group. We encourage you to take a look at it, access it online, provide feedback, and I'll yield for now and address some questions if they do come up later on. Thank you, Henry.
Thank you, thank you very much, Mike. Just a quick question. If I want to share the website to other people, do you have tools that can be used?
Yes, we do, and those, I believe, those are actually being reconfigured as part of the launch, so those should be available shortly. Yes, but we do have, I believe, the last count that was mentioned to me is about 150 social media networks, so you should be able to share that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
So we'll have a couple of chances for questions. Judy, do you have some questions? We've had some few comments from some participants.
Yeah, I've responded to a few already online, but I can just go through some of them. Somebody was asking about, will the webinar be available after this? Yes, it will be. It's actually being streamed on Facebook, so it will be on our Facebook page, and hopefully we will try to put a copy of this on the website as well, on the coalition's website. Somebody was asking, possible for users to distribute videos and locations of where it is happening. Mike?
Yes, you should be able to. I believe the feature is for you to use a quick tip. And you could, well, two things. Number one, you can upload a video, but there are some size limits, right? If those videos are too large, then you have the option of posting it on a Google Drive or a Dropbox location. You can share the link and it will be accessed and ingested and recorded in the system.
Yeah, and somebody also mentioned triangulation, to be able to use triangulation during data collection, because in the middle of the conflict, without triangulation, the data is less reliable.
Well, I will try, I mean, I'll provide a slightly different response to that answer, right? So we have a pretty open system in terms of the collection. We are relying on data from multiple sources and data that will, be relevant to different, points that are identified in the ingestion system. So what we will be doing is, again, doing analysis around that data, looking at everything from a broad-based perspective. But I think the key here is really to look at trends. Again, the CDN does not make judgments around these records. We are offering a collection system. The evidence that is ingested will be analyzed and used when the time comes for judgments to be rendered.
Okay, another question is concerns with regards to documenting in locations where there is limited connectivity of internet, for instance, in villages.
Well, that is more of an infrastructural problem, right? But I think we are exploring, again, options to ingest some of that using WhatsApp, which is a commonly used system. But again, the key here, and one of the things that people who put records into this system should keep in mind is, we want to have information that has multiple reference points. So in the past, if you check on social media, on WhatsApp, you'll see images of victims. You'll see people who've died. We don't have names. We don't have location information. Again, some of the key data points that are really important to be able to take that data and make decisions. That's what we're trying to encourage people to leverage. And so this tool gives you a framework of sorts to be able to do that. But again, if you are not in a position to do that because you're limited by, again, it could be just the infrastructure in the area where you are or the network connectivity, we'll be providing all other channels for you to do that.
Okay, a question, how do those in the impacted areas have access to this? They will also need a tutorial on this. Is there any plan for another training on using this tool?
We will be relying on Southern Cameroonians to take the word forward, right? Again, we'll be relying on people to reach out to victims of this crisis, to reach out to anyone who can benefit from this. But again, the training component is one that I think is important. My thinking at this point is that we will, again, provide maybe some training information that can help people get there. But again, this is really a launch. I'm sure based on the ideas that do come up, the CDN will take those into consideration and provide whatever the community is requesting.
So just to add on that, our local partners in the field, in the affected communities, will have training. We're also very, very aware of the identification and security issues with local data sourcing partners that we have in the field. We want to make sure that the training that we provide also make sure we insulate those that will be picking up data from the field from any form of intimidation or abuse. And so we have a team in place that will be exploring all of these and making sure that all the various best practices are applied. I see another question about if we'll be reaching out to other stakeholders who are also engaged in data collection. Like I said in the opening, we will be reaching out to all those stakeholders. But again, you understand that nobody can tell your story more than yourself, right? So we will try to make sure that the data that we receive, we share with other parties that are there. I just wanted to have a peek on the language component because someone may be asking, why do we have Chinese? But we don't only want to use this platform just to collect data, but we want to set it as an example for people who are suffering to be able to access how this platform is built and see how they can leverage it in their own communities. We're talking about Hong Kong, we're talking about China, we're talking about other areas that also have conflict and do not necessarily speak English or French, how they can get to this side, see what this sites offer and try to replicate it in their own communities. So that's why you see a multitude of different languages. Judith, any other question?
Yeah. So someone is asking, how do we overcome people's fear of reporting incidents? I think before I'll actually want some of the panelists, either Marie or Kerry, to add to this, but I think people need we need to educate ourselves to realize that, like Henry just said, and we said before, we have to tell our story. We know what is happening on the ground. You know somebody who knows somebody, you have a relative, and this tool is being managed by CDN. We are giving you our guarantees that this information is being used for the right purposes. The fear of reporting, think about the fear of people being killed. I mean, my hope is that your fear of the atrocities being committed would outweigh your fear of reporting. And we need to be able to tell our story. And like Mike said, there is a team behind the scenes. We have legal experts, we have technical experts, we have regulatory experts. We are working with our partners. All these people you see on the panel, if we have concerns, we will go to them to seek advice. So we are pleading and asking people to report. The world will not help us and they will not listen to us if we cannot report what is happening. So I don't know if Marie or Kerry or any Juliet want to add to that, because it's a problem. People do have a fear of reporting.
Yeah, I would just say, I think that trust in scenarios where atrocities are ongoing is a very real issue. And rebuilding trust is actually one of the key goals that any society experiencing atrocities has to go through. And one of the ways I could see it happening in this instance is making sure that there are stakeholders at the local level who can advocate for a tool like this and reassure people that this is a tool that can be trusted, because trust is really built from within communities, not necessarily from without, especially in societies that have been so disregarded by the international community again and again. And I would also say it comes from it's deeply connected to accessibility. So making sure that people, there are also ways of expanding so that people who might not be able to access this beautiful site can also find ways of reporting incidents through friends, through their telephone and other things like that. So all of these are part and parcel of the same issue that's incredibly important to consider in these cases.
If I can follow up, I'm glad you mentioned the ethical dilemma of such tools, because one of the early, when such technology was first used in other countries, they did not necessarily consider ethics and who would get a hand on the information, because we know that dictatorial regimes, for example, can use have easy access to information because they have the money to pay for it, especially data information. So it's important to protect, you know, to have a do no harm perspective with these tools. And something else that Carrie mentioned about low access to the internet, for example. On your phone, you have the capacity to just record your story as well, right? And try to send it later or to send it in one way or another. Journalists who do work in, let's say, Iraq or Syria or wherever, they often just record what they see and listen to it later. That's something that civilians on the ground who see atrocities but cannot report really in real time, they can record these things on their phone too. So, and try to send it later.
Any thoughts, Juliet?
Any thoughts, Juliet?
No, not really. I mean, everyone already said the right things. I think I can only underline at this point the importance of reporting this for organizations like the Global Center based in New York to do the advocacy with the Human Rights Council in Geneva, the Security Council in New York, to make people listen. We have direct access here to diplomatic missions from the United States, from France, from the United Kingdom, that are important players that can actually influence the situation and try to bring an end to the conflict. So any information that is available is very useful for advocacy purposes here in New York and in Geneva.
Thank you very much, Juliet. Now, I think we've exhausted most of the questions. For the questions that have not been addressed, we'll endeavor to contact the participants directly after this program. We are like 5 minutes above time. We will share the information with credible organizations that we believe would make use of this organization, this information, this data, to ensure that the conflict comes to an end and for perpetrators to be held accountable. So let me just give at least a minute each for the panelists to make some closing remarks, and then I can hand it to Juliet. But before they do so, I just want to say that in reaching out to local communities, we will get videos, demo videos in Pidgin English. We'll get demo videos in local languages to make sure we educate the communities on how about this tool and how they can leverage it to make sure that they deter further atrocities. I'll start with Kerry, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you to my fellow panelists. Thanks for the invitation. I guess I'll just end by saying, you know, there's a big focus in prevention, generally speaking, an idea that what we need is one intervention, one solution that's suddenly going to solve all of our problems. And I think the thing that we have to remember is there's no single solution to complex social and political problems like mass atrocities and large-scale identity-based violence. Responding to them requires not one big solution, but thousands of little solutions. And I think that this can be one tool in hopefully a growing number of tools to respond to atrocities happening in Central Africa, in Cameroon specifically. And I hope more and more will continue to be developed. But I thank you so much for the work that you and the entire team has been doing on this tool.
Thank you very much. Marie.
Yes, thank you very much to all of you. I think this is a great tool. And I know there seems to be a lot of, you know, really a lack of domestic and international political will to do anything about Cameroon at the moment, or other mass atrocity crimes that we're seeing somewhere or anywhere in the world. But in the long term, I think these tools are absolutely crucial for the victims and for justice. And I think people on the ground need to know that some of us are listening and some of us are watching this. And I know my colleagues at the Global Center for R2P, they're doing amazing work as well, like constantly keeping track of what's happening in Cameroon and other countries. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marie. Juliet, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you also, Marie, for your kind words. And big thank you for the coalition for organizing this event and for creating this tool. Like in 2005, every state in the world has committed to the responsibility to protect, to not stand idly by when civilians are at risk of atrocity crimes, or when atrocity crimes are being committed. And we're seeing an unfolding crisis in Cameroon that continues, and the international community once again is completely silent. So hopefully this tool will make it easier to to translate that commitment to effective action, and to make sure that the international community is upholding its responsibility to protect. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you at the coalition to get this tool out there and make it work. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much, Juliet and Kerry and Marie. We are more than 10 minutes gone. Let me now give the floor to Vali and Judith for closing remarks. And thank you all for your participation.
Yeah, thanks so much, Henry, Michael, and our distinguished panelists. This is such an important milestone, and really, really appreciate all of you taking time to contribute today, and to all of you out there who took time off work or important family affairs to attend this webinar. We really, really appreciate you. Really look forward to the information we'll collect from the field to really hold people accountable for all of these mass atrocities in this war.
Once more, thank you on behalf of the coalition. Thank you so much. We are grateful for all the help behind the scenes, for people who were not able to join us here, but we know have helped enormously behind the scenes for this project to come to fruition. We will be collaborating with other organizations out there. We know there are other tools out there as well. So we will be collaborating with other people out there. Some of the things I just wanted to highlight again. This tool, you can also input historical information. So like Mike said earlier, there are incidents already recorded, but if you think you have more information, you have more data on something that has already happened, that is on the site, please go in there, do a quick tip or do an update on that particular incident. On the language issue, we also want the rest of the world to appreciate what we are going through. So if you meet a colleague who is Chinese, who is Spanish, and you talk to them about what's going on, they should be able to come to the site and read and understand and be able to appreciate what we are going through. On that note, I just want to say thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you on Saturday, this coming Saturday, February 13th, where we are hosting another webinar to discuss US Senate Resolution 684. We are going to have parliamentarians from US, Germany, Kenya, South Africa, France, the Gambia, and other panelists with background in legislative affairs and how we can work with Congress and parliaments around the world to help us implement some of the asks that were in that resolution, to be able to help us bring peace and be able to resolve the ongoing crisis, and stop the conflict. So thank you so much to everybody, Mike, Henry, and the team in the background, Vali, for all the input, and to our panelists. We cannot do this without our friends, and we are happy that we can call you friends, and we will keep collaborating with yourselves. Also accept greetings from the steering, all of the steering committee and our advisory board and the members. I can see Chris Fobinio, one of our advisory board members, on here. So accept greetings from everybody, and we hope to see you all on Saturday. That will be an excellent discussion as well. So see you then, and thank you. And thanks, Kevin.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin, and the team. Thank you, as always, in the background.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Juliet.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and see you on Saturday.
We keep the engagement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind words, and thank everybody for joining us today. We will conclude the webinar right now. It'll be available on Facebook so that you can see it again and share it with your colleagues and friends. Remember that we have another webinar that is going to come up on this Saturday. Thank you all, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.